Alright, so let's take two things here. Video games and school. How do we combine both of these things and get something awesome at the same time?
Video games are cool. You can play them, watch them, look at them as well. Heck, you can even read them too. Video game books are something that you don't see talked about a lot, mainly because most video game books you see aren't really made from the actual companies themselves. Usually when it comes to video game books, they are made by another party just to make a quick book, and these books aren't really all that bad. But there are ways that you can get your hands on authentic video game books that were distributed from the companies themselves. One way, of course, is official merchandise from the companies. Some examples can be like the Sonic the Hedgehog Encyclopedia, where it details Sonic's whole history over the past 30 years. Also, you got the Mario versions of those as well that Nintendo's put out in recent years, as well as the big video game strategy guide books that companies put out that are pretty much glorified game manuals nowadays. But one other place where you can get your hands on video game books is a place that we all loved when we were kids. A place that came every year and would brighten our day at school by 10 times. What exactly am I going on about, ladies and gentlemen? I'm talking about the Scholastic Book Fair. The Scholastic Book Fair is an event that many of us when we were younger held very dearly to our hearts. Whenever it was time for the book fair to come to town, school would actually be a fun thing to show up to. The book fair would always have something to get us kids excited about back then, whether it was the silly bendy pencils, the pointer fingers, the iPhone or $100 bill erasers, the whole boatload of all the spy stuff, and of course the books as well, but who really cared about that when the biggest thing there was a $100 bill eraser? The Scholastic Book Fair had so much wonderful things that could truly make your day at school. Even with all the fun knickknacks you could get there was always a fun amount of books they had available too, from the Mad Libs to the Lego books, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Also, let's mention the I Spies as well, and who could forget the literal backpack-size Guinness Book of World Records that I don't think anyone could actually afford. Even if there was no book fair of yours at your school, you've likely seen these catalogs right here, aka book orders that you'd get from school. You know, the ones you take home and annoy your parents about. Then you get the order filled out and circle which books that you wanted, and then once those bags finally arrive at your desk, it just felt so wonderful seeing the book that you wanted there in your hands. Book fair or book order form, whichever it was, whenever it was time for the Scholastic Book Fair, it was truly a magical time. The things that would always catch my eyes would be the Lego books like Batman or Ninjago, random crap at the checkout like a sweatband or something, and an honorable mention, the spy gadgets every now and again, and of course, the video game books as well. Ah yes, how could I forget? One of the best parts of the Scholastic Book Fair was the video game books. This part was one of the things that got a lot of us, especially me, to the book fair to find some cool stuff. From cheat codes to Guinness Book of World Records Gamer Edition, there was all kinds of video game books at the Scholastic Book Fair, and that was just a few I named. These books were some of my favorite things to get whenever it came to the Scholastic Book Fair coming to town. If there was a video game related book there on the shelves, I was gonna try and get that thing. You got your simple books like some of these that came out towards my later middle school days. These things were alright, but these aren't really official. These are pretty much just Scholastic made books for the book fair with just these iconic video game characters on it. I never really looked at this one that much, mainly because I was getting a little too old for the book fair by the time this one came around. But the ones from my early school days, oh man, bring out the nostalgia train for this one. To get us started, here we have the Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition, and I have quite a number of these things because I would collect them almost just about every year. While I do love these other Guinness Book of World Records that I own, this one right here holds a very special place in my heart, mainly because this one I'd see in the bookshelves all the time when I went to the book fair back then. Whenever I did see this book, when I'd see Mario and the Angry Birds space renders on the cover, that alone sold me on this book. These books are always an entertaining journey to flip through. Going back and looking at them now, it's so fun seeing all the records that people would break or make here, with a lot of them being very impressive, and it's also neat to do research to see if the record still holds up to this very day. Of course, I didn't understand any of this when I was a kid, but I just loved browsing through these things whenever I got one. I loved looking at the game facts within these books, and also just seeing the cool screenshots and renders of my favorite games and characters, and even learning about new games too. Heck, this one right here is when I first saw young Kratos. The Guinness Book of World Record Gamers Edition has been a Scholastic Book Fair staple for as long as I can remember. I'm not sure if they still sell it nowadays, but just about every year whenever there was a Scholastic Book Fair when I was in school, there was always one right there. But one that was actually around before my time of going to Scholastic Book Fairs was the cheat code books. Now these are pretty nifty. Apparently these things were around for a long while in book fairs, and it makes sense mainly because cheat codes have been around since video games made their comeback in the mid 80s. So of course when video games kept getting bigger as years went on and cheat codes were still a thing in the 2000s, of course you're gonna find a book about cheat codes for games featuring the Amazing Spider-Man for Wii. The amount of hours I'd sit through and browse these books was insane. A good chunk of my 5th grade and 6th grade years, I was flipping through these cheat code books like there was no tomorrow. Whenever I was done with classwork from school, I'd spend a number of of time flipping through these cheat code books whenever I had some free time. You know, there's actually one day I remember specifically when reading this cheat code book. I was somewhere after school and I was sitting down reading this cheat code book, and one page that I stumbled across was the Sonic section for the Xbox 360. And it was this section here where I would find the codes for all the statues for the Sonic Generation statue room. So you better believe whenever I found this out, I rushed home as fast as I could to put in all those codes to unlock the statues in the statue room. This was such a find for me. Before then, I thought I already found what all of Sonic Generations had to offer on console. But nope, there was still a whole treasure chest of stuff here to see. While I wasn't interested in a lot of cheat codes other than Sonic back then, and sure, a good chunk of the cheat codes aren't really anything juicy like the Sonic 2 cheat codes on the Genesis or GTA cheat codes or something like that, these cheat codes are kind of just almost guides in a way to help you unlock stuff, but these do have some pretty cool cheat codes in here for other games, and who knows, maybe the ones that were sold before 2014 likely had some cooler stuff in it as well. But those are some of the kinds of stuff you see every year at the Scholastic Book Fair when it comes to town. Guinness Book of World Records and cheat codes are fun and all, but what about the stuff that only happens once in a lifetime at a Scholastic Book Fair? Well, to talk about once in a lifetime books, first thing that I'm sure a lot of us had growing up was the Minecraft handbooks. Oh my gosh, just looking at these things bring back a ton of memories. Before I discovered the cheat code books, these were the books that I and some of my friends were reading back then. We'd read them either at lunch, or if we just had a free day at school and we talk about how cool these books were and just talking about our Minecraft worlds. There were a total of 4 of these books, and I have all 4 of them still to this very day. Those being the Essential Handbook, the Construction Handbook, the Combat Handbook, and of course, the Redstone Handbook. These handbooks were such a fun read, and they're actually a great handbook for when someone is trying to get into Minecraft. One of my friends who actually got into Minecraft after these came out, he actually used these to aid him whenever he first started playing the game. Maybe just a little bit too much whenever he started giving me a questionnaire about Minecraft, but whatever. While the only one I've used as actually as a guide was the Redstone one, because I was never good with Redstone, so this kind of had to give me the crash course on it. I mean, look at this thing. They gave it a hardcover, alright? That's how you know this one was important. But the other ones are genuinely a fun read with information and details about certain things on whatever the page was about, as well as did you knows and tipstone in here as well. The screenshots, arts, and renders all look very nice, and again, each piece of info for whatever the topic is being presented is very nicely shown off here. The construction book has a lot of cool things showing what can be built. I always loved looking at creations for stuff in this book, even attempted to build some of this stuff in this book as well back then, even though I failed very miserably. Combat book shows off nicely how to defeat mobs and protect yourself and all that sort of stuff. The Redstone book is literally just a redstone tutorial in paper form, so this one is a necessity to say the least. And of course, the classic book that literally just about all of us had, and that is the Essential Book. The Essential Book has a number of things here. Not only does it have nice information on how to get started and whatnot, there's also fun things to see here as well, like journal entries from Paul Soares Jr. on playing Minecraft, as well as a typed out interview at the time with the main guys themselves, Jeb and Notch. Basically, these two answering questions about them making Minecraft and all sorts of other stuff. These books are genuinely a great piece of Minecraft history, and looking through these books, it almost feels like something straight out of an actual game manual from the case. Though saying that, I don't know how they were going to fit all of this stuff in an actual game manual, so good call on making these instead.
There's a small problem here.
I would read these books for hours, whether at school or visiting some family's house, or if I was just bored on a weekend. These Minecraft books are really not only full of nostalgia, but are a Scholastic staple. I mean, the logo is right there, so all in all, the Minecraft handbooks are well-crafted pieces of literature for what they are, and genuinely are great handbooks and are a lot of fun to look at whether or not you need them. These books truly are a staple to the world of video games at the Scholastic Book Fair. But just about everyone knows of these books. I mean, come on, it's Minecraft. But I have 2 more books that I think not many of you may be aware of, actually. And the first one is a bit of an oddball.
Holy crap, is that Mario 64?
The Mario series is known for many things, literature not being one of them. However, one book was released in the Scholastic Book Fair in 2006 that I would find in the year 2011. This book was Nintendo Heroes Mario and the Incredible Rescue. This book was a big part of my childhood for a bit, and I loved it. I remember the year and day I bought this book at the book fair. When I was at school, I constantly would take this book out of my backpack and just look at that cover art of Mario and Luigi hopping on these green mushrooms. And then whenever school was out, I rushed home and waited for my dad to come home from work so I could show him this cool new Mario related thing I had. This book was all that and a bag of chips for me, mainly because 1, it's Mario. I flippin' loved Mario like crazy when I was a kid. I mean, who didn't? Second, it was a chapter book about Mario Mario and Luigi going on an adventure together, just like how I played on my Wii and DSi from the time. Now, to talk about the actual book itself, this book is definitely an interesting piece of literature, especially since, yes, this is actually officially put out by Nintendo themselves, which is really cool to think about that Nintendo started a book series at one point in time. Apparently, another one was released as well, being on The Legend of Zelda, that one being titled Link and the Portal of Doom. I actually never knew this one existed till researching for this video. I never saw this one growing up, but this does look pretty interesting, and I'll definitely have to find this book sometime and read it. But to get back to Mario, The Incredible Rescue is a book that I will forever cherish. This book is a cool chapter book from Nintendo, and the author, Tracy West, managed to really capture the world of Mario well in this book. The plot of the book, while simple, yes, it still has that Mario type story to it, but it does do a little something different at the same time. To summarize the plot for you guys, Bowser has kidnapped Peach and put a spell around his castle to prevent Mario and gang from saving her. So Mario, Luigi, and Toad, on their way to save Peach, have to find 6 special mushrooms and collect all of them to break the spell and save Princess Peach. Again, while the plot is like most Mario games, it's still a neat little book that I loved reading growing up. While the book might not be groundbreaking, nor is it canon to the actual Mario storyline at all, but for it being an officially licensed Nintendo book that has its own story starring the cast of characters we love is really cool to see. All in all, I love this book a lot, and it definitely is one of the biggest highlights from the Scholastic Book Fair in my eyes. Now, I have one more book from another franchise that was an exclusive to the Scholastic Book Fair, and this one is a book I probably read the most of besides the Lego books I had. That book was from the franchise being...
I mean, it's basically this. What you see is what you get. Just a guy that loves adventure!
The Sonic franchise is big with many things. Its games, its TV shows, and its movies, but not so much on its literature. Besides the official Sonic comics from Archie and IDW, Sonic the Hedgehog books aren't really much of a thing, until 2016 when Sega and Scholastic teamed up to release this. Sonic, His Amazing History. Yeah, this title is kind of hard to say out loud. Like, couldn't you add an and or something? This book launched in 2016, around the time before Sonic's 25th anniversary, and the title says just about everything. This book is pretty much the history of the Sonic series from being created up to the era of Sonic Boom at the time. Oh man, now this one was a really fun read back then, at least for me. Mainly because at this point, just about everything Sonic related was Sonic Boom. So seeing this beautiful modern Sonic render on the cover really drew my eyes to it a lot back then. And I craved for anything to have modern Sonic be back in official Sonic media. And when getting this book, I was definitely not disappointed at all. This book definitely doesn't miss when it comes to going over Sonic's history. While I already knew a thing or two about the history of Sonic thanks to YouTube, this book was still very fun to read, seeing the words straight from the horse's mouth like Naoto Oshima, Yuji Naka, and Hirokazu Yasura. This book definitely spends a lot more time in the 90s talking about Sonic's making and whatnot, but there's still more stuff here to look at as well as alongside the origins. There's a number of fun facts about creating Sonic, words from Yuji Naka on working on the first few Sonic games, words from other game designers and artists, etc. Goes over the success of the Sonic Genesis games, to then eventually talks about Sonic going 3D, shows all the games from 2D to 3D and spin-offs as well. There's character descriptions too that are very small at times. And then there's just even the full-blown advertisement sections. There's even a little segment that talks about Sonic fans and how much they love the franchise and how they started Sonic conventions like Summer of Sonic and Sonic Boom. This was pretty cool to see from an official book, but around the time, this was when Sega was acknowledging the fans more with the series, and also this is when the Sonic social media was becoming self-aware and blowing up with its Twitter account shenanigans from Aaron Weber. So stuff like this made sense at the time. Although there is one thing that doesn't make sense to this very day on this book. They mentioned Sonic fanfiction. Did you really have to do that? Overall, the Sonic His Amazing History book, while not having too much in it, it is by far one of the coolest things that Scholastic has put out in my eyes. What's even cooler about this book is that this is the first time a Sonic history book was ever published, and this was the only one for a long time, until 2021 when Sega and Dark Horse released the Sonic the Hedgehog 30th Anniversary Encyclopedia, which tells the whole Sonic the Hedgehog story featuring artwork, lore explanations, and everything Sonic related over the past 30 years. This book is a wonder and a very awesome release for a longtime Sonic fan such as myself. But to think that this book here from the Scholastic Book Fair was technically the first one, that's just cool to me. While the encyclopedia has more to offer than this book by a lot, I'll always cherish and remember this little book right here, along with other books I own from the many years I would go shopping at the Scholastic Book Fair.
And how could you forget your trusty sweatband and pointer finger you still have 10 years later?
The Scholastic Book Fair was an event we as kids all really and truly loved a lot. Whether you were there for the books themselves or the pointer fingers, the funny scented bendy pencils, the funny erasers, or all the spy gadgets, whichever it was, you can't deny that feeling you got whenever you woke up on a new school day and knowing it was time for the book fair. Sure, you could always just get a book from the library, but Scholastic was more fun, obviously, mainly because there was more books that was more appealing to us when we were kids. And of course, how could you forget the fun times of pestering your parents into letting you have some book fair money to get the books you wanted oh so badly, because you just couldn't live without the I Spy books, right? The point I'm trying to get at is that while a lot of us might be grown now and doing our own thing, we can still forever cherish the good times from the Scholastic Book Fair and what it had to offer. And I'll take this time to say thank you, Scholastic, for giving me and many other people my age and generations before and after me a wonderful childhood with the magical event that was the Scholastic Book Fair. Thank you for watching today's video, everybody, and I will see you guys next time. Dun-dun-dun.